So, what if I told you that you are not your body? I mean, really. The core of a pretty radical theory we're digging into today suggests that you're actually the pilot. And your body? Well, your body is just the vehicle you're operating.
Here it is, the central claim from physicist Federico Fagen. He's arguing that your conscious experience, that feeling of actually being you, doesn't happen inside your brain at all. Nope. He says it comes from a quantum field, somewhere outside of space-time, that operates your body remotely. Yeah, just like a drone.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't coming from some New Age guru or an ancient philosopher. This idea comes from the guy who literally architected our entire digital world, the man who laid the foundation for every single computer and smartphone on the planet. And that creates this fascinating paradox, right? A titan of technology is proposing a deeply, spiritual model of reality.
So, how on earth does a mind like that come up with such a mind-bending idea? To really get this theory, we first have to understand the man behind it. Federico Fagen, a brilliant physicist and a Silicon Valley pioneer, he didn't start out thinking this way. Not even close. He was a firm materialist. He was convinced consciousness had to come from matter. I mean, what else could it possibly come from?
Look at his career. It was all dedicated to a computational view of the universe. He literally built the brains of classical computers and then moved on to neural networks, all with the hope of one day creating a conscious AI. But then, one night in 1990, every single thing he believed in was just shattered.
Fagen described this overwhelming energy of unconditional love just exploding from his chest. And in that moment, he felt his own consciousness expand way beyond his body. He felt like he became both the observer of reality and the very fabric of reality itself. It was a single, profound experience that just completely destroyed his materialist worldview and set him on a totally new scientific path.
Okay, so how do you even begin to explain an experience like that scientifically? To try and bridge his personal revelation with his deep background in physics, Fagen came up with this really powerful analogy that gets right to the heart of his theory.
This model just cleanly separates the experiencer from the machine. So you are the pilot, your body is the drone, and it's feeding you all this sensory data. But the actual experience, the redness of red, the feeling of joy, that happens in your conscious field, not in the drone's hardware. Then you use your free will to send commands back down to the body. And here's the kicker. In this view, when the body dies, when the drone goes down, the pilot isn't destroyed. The pilot is still there.
Now, this drone analogy, for us as individuals, it's actually built on a much bigger idea about the fundamental nature of reality itself.
Every scientific theory is built on some foundational assumptions or postulates. Fagen says that mainstream science starts with the wrong one, that matter is the fundamental thing. He thinks we need to flip the script and start with the only two things we know for absolute certain, directly from our own existence. The logic is pretty simple, actually. How can you explain consciousness and free will if you start with matter, which doesn't seem to have either? You can't get more from less. So Fagen says, let's not start with matter, let's start with the most self-evident truths there are. You know you are conscious, and you know you have at least some free will. In his view, these aren't just illusions created by your brain, they are the very bedrock of reality.
So if consciousness is fundamental, what's its language? Fagen calls it quantum information. Now, don't think of this like computer data, like zeros and ones. Think of it more like the data of feeling itself, your inner subjective experience. And the really crucial point is that it's private. I can tell you I'm happy, but I can't digitally copy and send you my actual feeling of happiness. That experience is fundamentally non-copyable.
And this distinction, this difference between private quantum information and public classical information, well, it's key. It draws this bright, bold line between the world of subjective experience and the world of objective matter.
Think about it this way. A book is classical information. Anyone can read it, copy it, share it. But the words on the page don't have any meaning by themselves. The meaning, the experience of the story, that only happens inside you, the reader. That inner experience, that's the quantum information. It's private, it's unique, and it absolutely cannot be duplicated.
And this difference, it extends to machines versus life. A microprocessor, it's just a collection of dumb switches. One switch doesn't know anything about the whole computer. But a living cell, Fagen calls it a part-whole system. That means the part contains the information of the whole.
And think about it. Every cell in your body contains the DNA blueprint for your entire organism. This makes life a combined quantum and classical system, something infinitely more complex than any classical computer we could ever build.
So all of this leads to the really big questions. What does this all mean for us? If we're not just biological machines, then what are we? And how should we be thinking about all these artificial machines we're building?
Well, the implication for artificial intelligence is pretty profound. If true understanding and real creativity are properties of consciousness, a quantum phenomenon, then a classical computer, which just operates on copyable bits of information, can never, ever replicate it. Sure, AI can be an unbelievably powerful tool for processing classical information, but it can never know or understand anything. It'll never have that inner world.
Okay, this all sounds fascinating, maybe even kind of beautiful, but it raises the obvious question, right? Is this just philosophy, or can it actually be tested? Can this theory make a prediction that could be proven wrong? You know, the hallmark of real science.
And Fagan says, yes, absolutely, it is testable. His theory makes a really bold prediction, that consciousness isn't just exclusive to organisms with brains. In fact, he claims he has a method to prove, scientifically, that a tree is conscious. Now, if he can actually do that, it would completely upend the mainstream view that consciousness is just something that happens inside the brain.
So ultimately, the theory just flips our entire perspective on its head. We tend to think we are physical beings who somehow developed consciousness along the way. Fagan's arguing that we are conscious beings who use the physical world to know ourselves. As he puts it, consciousness isn't something to be explained, it's the very thing that does the explaining.
This changes the whole central question of life, doesn't it? It's no longer just about survival, it's about exploration. So the final question is, if you really are the pilot, what are you here to explore?